Hey, thanks for joining me. Today I'm going to be talking about 5 great albums from the 80s. And this isn't necessarily a new series I'm going to start. Reason being is because most of my 80s albums are done by well known bands with big discographies that, whether I've done in the past or I'm going to do in the future, are bands that deserve their own videos. So this is odds and ends of 80s stuff, and I'll make one here and there. Number 1, Metal Church, the self-titled album. So Metal Church are an American heavy metal band that formed in 1980. And at this point, they have put out 13 albums, but this is the debut album from 1985, released on Elektra. The vocals are like Udo from Accept, but toned down. The riffs and solos are good, but not quite at the level I expected. The consensus seems to be that this is the best album, their classic one. And while I do think it's solid, I did do a track by track breakdown, just kind of writing down what I thought of each song. And my final score was a 71%. So pretty cool, but not classic, unlike the next album I'm going to talk about. But my favorite songs on here are number 2, Metal Church, and number 6, In the Blood. So another California thrash band, formed in '79, 1 year before Metal Church. But this is their debut album, Bonded by Blood, which also came out in 1985, the same year as Metal Church did. So, like Metal Church also, at this point, Exodus have put out 12 albums, and this is the debut from 1985. I should note that this is the censored or the secondary cover artwork. The first one has these evil twins on the front cover. But this was the one that I grew up with, so this is the album cover to me. So this was the one and only album with Paul Baloff on vocals. And he would rejoin the band in 1997, and that's when I first became acquainted with them. In 1997, thrash was getting a bit of a resurgence that went away and then came back again in the 2000s. But during that era, Paul rejoined the band and they performed Bonded by Blood live and put it out on CD. And I think it was called A Lesson in Violence, the album. But again, this is the only album with Paul Baloff on vocals, and I think he is awesome. And sadly, he departed quite a few years ago. But this album here is definitely a 10 out of 10 thrash album. And my favorite song here is definitely Metal Command. I saw that chorus and bangers take a stand and obey. Metal Command! And he sounds crazy when he does it. And he was apparently like the real thing. He was a metal warrior till the end, it seems. So yeah, I drifted off a bit on that, but haven't heard the new Exodus stuff. People say it's quality. They've had a couple different frontmans. I'm just not up to date with it. And I just thought of it. I had it on the wall here. I do this Gary Holt autograph, the guitar player and basically the leader of the band. Got that through the Metalhead box a couple years ago. What's next? Also formed in 1979, The Exploited. They are a Scottish punk rock band that have put out quite a few things, but the most recent album was in 2003, and while they still tour, they put out no new music since then. But anyways, this one's called Let's Start a War, and this came out in, I believe this was 1988. Straightforward punk, but fast and heavy. I always had this interest in The Exploited before I ever actually listened to them. I think because during the late 80s, they did have a era where they definitely took on the crossover thrash sound. So I thought they were more metal influenced than most of our albums really are. So this album wasn't as metal influenced as I would have liked, but I still thought it was cool. I still remember whenever I think of this album, I just had a whole bunch of, when I was younger, I had a whole bunch of albums or bands I was looking for CDs from for my birthday. So my sisters went to the record store with this big list, and they didn't really have a lot of underground music, but they ended up getting me this one. And they said the record clerk was like, "Oh, I hope you're okay. You got a crazy brother who listens to this devil music or something." But I don't know. I always think of that little antidote. The guy was probably joking. But yeah, The Exploited, cool stuff, but not really my thing. Let's get a cassette here. This is Fields of the Nephilim, and this album's called The Nephilim. They're an English goth rock band that formed in 1984, and they put out 5 albums between 1987 and 2005. And this is the second album from 1988. The first album, Dawn Razor, I think is the best thing they've done. And I'm probably not the only one saying that, but another cool release. I don't really like this album cover. That's why I don't really reach for it all that often. But I love goth rock, and it's a good one. Now here's a big name of the 80s. This is Jane's Addiction. Nothing shocking. They formed in 1985 in Los Angeles, and the most notable members are definitely Perry Farrell on vocals and Dave Navarro, most notably being in the Red Hot Chili Peppers in the 90s and 2000s after Jane's Addiction. And this album is definitely a classic rock album of the 80s. My favorite songs on here are Ocean Size, Mountain Song especially, and Jane Says. Classic stuff. And they broke up in 1990 after the second album, Ritual De Lo Habitual. And this is the censored artwork on this one. It was just one of those getting it at a used CD store, and you take what you can get. Which is a good one, but Nothing Shocking is way better. And Jane's Addiction would reform on somewhat of a part-time basis, I get the impression. They put out a third album in 2003 and a fourth album in 2011. And from what I gather, there is one forthcoming in 2024. So that's it. 5 great albums from the 80s, and I'll see you next time. Thank you.